So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
We are from Group 1, from Group Skills Reading. And the members of this group is Hisbah Luli, Muhammad Ulfan Igirisa, Nadia caesarina Ntau, Nur Afni Yahya, dan Fitriani S. Saleh. So, in this presentation, we're gonna talk about approach. Next slide, please. So the table of content is the definition of approach, types of learning approach, and the conclusion. So the definition of approach. An approach is a way of looking at teaching and learning. Underlying any language teaching approach is a theoretical view of what language is and of how it can be learned. An approach gives rise to the methods, the way of teaching something which use classroom activities or techniques to help learners learn. Here are the difference between teaching approach, teaching method, and the teaching technique based on the definition. The first one is the teaching approach is a set of assumptions dealing with the nature of language, teaching, and learning. So the next one is the teaching method is an overall plan for systematic presentation of language based upon a selected approach. Method is a procedural. Within one approach, there can be many methods. And the next one is teaching technique is a technique being implemented, the specific activities manifested in the classroom that are consistent with a method and therefore in harmony with an approach as well. So approach is just the way we see the teaching and the learning process itself. And with the approach, we can come with so many methods. With a different students, with approaching a different students, we can use a different method. So yeah, that is the definition of approach. The next slide, please. The next, okay. Then the next material is the types of learning approach. So there are the types of approach lesson learning. So the first one is the contextual approach. Background contextual approach that students learn more meaningful through the activities of self-experience in natural environment. The presentation of teaching materials that are contextualized to life situation around students and thematic approaches. Presentation of teaching materials in the form of topic and theme. So the contextual approach is a approach or the methods that teachers use to give an example from the material based on the students' lives or the students' environment. And the second one is the constructivism approach. Constructivism is the cornerstone of approach, thinking contextual, namely that the approach is built by humans bit by bit, whose results are expanded through a limited context and not suddenly. So constructivism as approach is that approach that cannot be instant. They are structure or they are step-by-step approach that is being used. So we have to approach the students slowly, step by step, and so that we can understand or we can think about what methods that can be used in the student. And I think that's it for me from Hisbah by the definition of approach and contextual approach and constructivism approach. And the next material will be presented by Nur Afni Yahya. So Nur Afni Yahya, the time is yours.
Okay, number 3 is deductive approach.
The deductive approach is characterized by the presentations of concepts, definitions, and terms at the beginning of the lessons. The deductive approach is based on the idea that the process of learning will take place well if students have known the problems area and the basic concept. It is clarified by giving example. For example, at first many examples are put forward to students and then he draws out conclusions based on this example. Number 4 is inductive approach. The main characteristic of the inductive approach to processing information is to use data to build concept or to gain understanding data. Used is primary data or can also be in the form of real cases happening in the environment. The inductive approach is a reasoning process that starts from special circumstance to general conditions. Okay, number 5 is the teacher-centered approach. The teacher-centered approach is more traditional in nature and focuses on the teacher as an instructor. In this teaching method, the teacher controls what needs to be taught and how the students receive the information they should use. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, number 6 is child-centered approach. Child-centered approach is when the teacher are using student-centered approach to teaching. You still set the learning agenda, but you have much less direct control over what and how student learning. Okay, the next will be explained by my friends. Time, it's yours.
Okay. And then process-based approach includes an approach oriented to teacher educational institutions. The presentation of teaching materials that are almost all activities are controlled by teacher and staff of the institution education. While student seems passive and student-oriented approach, presentation of material change that emphasize the participation of student during the process learning, while the teacher is only a facilitator, mentor, and a leader. And the natural approach. The natural approach is a method of language teaching developed by Stephen Karasenant Trachiterel in the late 1970s and early 1980s. In the natural approach, language output is not forced but allowed to emerge spontaneously after students have attended to large amounts of comprehensible language input. The approach focuses on input, comprehensive and meaningful communication, and put less emphasis on grammar. Teacher monologue, direct repetition, and accuracy. The natural approach is more concerned with providing understandable input. This principal result in classroom where teacher emphasize engaging understandable input and allow insight situations. And then oral approach. The oral approach relies on the use of situation to teach language. Situation is the use of such as picture and object to teach. Students are expected to listen and repeat what the instructor says. This means that students have little control over content. Jadi pendekatan lisan adalah pendekatan ala Inggris yang diterima pada pengajaran bahasa Inggris tahun 1950-an. The main characteristic of the approach is as below. Pertama, language teaching begins with the spoken language material taught orally before it is explained in written form. Kedua, the target language is the language in the classroom. And then new language points are introduction and practice situational. Next, we will explain by my friend.
Okay, thank you, Fitri. Next, oral approach. The oral approach relies on the use of situation to teach language. A situation is the use of such as pictures and objects to teach. Students are expected to listen and repeat what the instruction says. This means that students have little control over content. So the oral approach is to determine to the knowledge possessed by student, introduce the target language, improve student abilities and pronunciation, foreign language, speaking and reading. The things learned in the oral approach are pronunciation, presentation, oral exercise, and reading materials. Next, lexical approach. Lexical approach in language teaching refers to one derived from the belief that the building blocks of language learning and communication are not grammar, function, nation, or some other unit of planning a teaching, but lexis, that is words and word combination. Lexical approach in language teaching reflect a belief in the centrality of the lexicon to language structure. Linguistic theory has also recognized are more central for vocabulary in linguistic description. The lexical approach is a method teaching foreign language. Describe the basic concept is which is the approach raises is the ideas that and important. So lexical approach is words, not grammar or function, but it's words and word combination. It's not. Next, banking approach. The banking concept in education is a concept in philosophy original explored by Brazilian philosopher Paulo Freire in his The banking concept of education is a method of teaching and learning where the students simply store the information related to them by the teacher in a banking type of environment. A classroom is structured in a way that the primary duty of students is to remember and accurately recall to the information provided by the instructor. They are not asked to participate in any other way and simply observe the information. Next, integrate approach. The integrate approach that to teaching technology combines content or instruction with computer skills instruction. Rather than learning computer skills in their computer class, the students are given projects which involve technology in all of their class. Integrative learning is approach where the learner brings together prior knowledge and experience to support new knowledge and experience. By doing this, learning drawn on their skills and apply to them to new experience at a more complex level. I think that's enough for me about my material. Next will be explained Muhammad Ulfan Igirisa.
Okay, next is metacognitive approach. Metacognition refers to the knowledge and control people have over their thinking and learning activities. The metacognitive approach we are proposing is an alternative way to teach critical thinking skill and is based on the participles of infusion. The teacher directly teach students specific critical thinking skill within the concept of subject matter. The teacher primarily accomplishes this through modeling the use and application of critical thinking. In addition, the skills are also modeled by the learners. There is strong evidence for the effectiveness of the modeling component of the metacognitive. And the last but not least is evaluation or Bloom approach. Bloom's evaluation approach to listen plan enables pupils to learn from basic to complex, promote critical thinking and constructivist approach to learning. Provides a stage for the teachers to design different classroom experience for students and give importance to student-centered classroom. So this approach prioritizes student comfort and teacher sensitive in order to make learning interesting and comfortable for students. And the next and conclusion, the approach lesson plan is really helpful because an approach is a way of looking at teaching and learning. Underlying any language teaching approach is a theoretical view of what language is and of how it can be learned. An approach gives rise to method, the way of teaching something which use classroom activities or techniques to help learners learn. Okay, back to Andre Hisbah, Ghalib, Luli.
Okay, thank you to our members, Muhammad Ulfan Igirisa, Fitriani S, Saleh, Nadia, Caesarina, Ntau, dan Nur Afni Yahya for the presentation. So I think that's it for our group 1, that we talk about what is approach. And I hope you guys can learn something from our presentation. And that's it. I'm moderator Andres Bagagili, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much.